Hello and welcome to another train spotting video on the SimTrain tube. In this video you'll see all the different trains on the route that depart Frankfurt between 8 and 9 AM, plus a little extra at the end of the video. This is the Trains of Frankfurt. Chapter 1. The Regional Workhorse. We begin with one of the most familiar regional sites in the Frankfurt timetable, a double-deck push-pull train led from the cab car. In this scene, the 767.2 isn't providing the power, instead it acts as the driving trailer at the front of the train. The actual traction is pushed from the locomotive at the very rear, while the driver controls the entire service remotely from this leading cab. For a sprawling terminus like Frankfurt Hbf, this push-pull operation is pure efficiency. A train can glide into a dead-end platform, the driver simply changes ends, and the service departs in the opposite direction minutes later. This completely eliminates the need for a time-consuming locomotive runaround. Looking at the timetable, this iconic control car commands a sizable presence. There are 55 services in total. These are split between short, intricate depot shunts around Frankfurt and longer regional runs out to Mainz Bischofsheim. This offers a brilliant mix of work. Some movements are purely tactical, positioning empty coaches, while others plunge you straight into the heavy passenger flow radiating out of the city. Here, our focus is on the intricate crawl out of Frankfurt. The train is navigating the dense throat of the station area, surrounded by a complex maze of trackwork, overhead wires, and intersecting traffic. While it might not be the fastest or most dramatic departure in this video, it serves as the perfect opening chapter. It captures the everyday rhythm of the region. Long before the high-speed ICE services steal the spotlight, it's the regional network doing the heavy lifting. The double-deck coaches are masterfully suited to this role. These bi-level cars maximize passenger capacity without extending the length of the train, which is critical on these saturated commuter corridors. Built by Bombardier between 1997 and 2008, these fourth-generation bi-levels are cleared for a top speed of 160 km per hour. In Train Sim World, this vehicle represents the control side of that family. It is not the brute force of the locomotive, but the brains of the operation. It's a fitting start to our journey, a practical, high-capacity regional departure that showcases the relentless movement of one of Germany's busiest railway hubs. Chapter 2, the 423. After the regional double-deck set, we move to something much more local, the Class 423. In this timetable, this unit has a very heavy presence with 117 services. These are short S-Bahn workings, usually taking around 11 to 12 minutes, running between Frankfurt and Frankfurt Höchst, or in the opposite direction. This is also one of the chapters that starts underground in Frankfurt, which gives it a very different feel from the surface-level regional and long-distance departures. Instead of a big mainline departure from the open station throat, the tracks go back up to the surface right after departing. The Class 423 is exactly the kind of unit that fits that role. It is a lightweight, articulated electric multiple unit designed for German S-Bahn networks with strong acceleration and plenty of doors for fast passenger exchange. Historically, the class was built between 1998 and 2007 and was used on several major S-Bahn systems, including Frankfurt. Chapter 3. The 642. Next, we have the Class 642. This small diesel multiple unit brings a completely different type of movement into the Frankfurt area. In this timetable, the 642 has 74 services. Roughly two-thirds of those are short depot moves, which makes perfect sense for a compact regional unit. The remaining services are passenger runs between Mainz Hauptbahnhof and Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof, with journey times ranging from 32 to 44 minutes. In this chapter, the 642 stands out because it is a much smaller, self-contained unit. It does not need a locomotive, and it does not rely on overhead wires like the electric trains around it. Visually, that makes it feel unique in the dense electrified environment of Frankfurt, but operationally, it has a clear role. These services help connect the main station with surrounding regional routes, while the depot moves keep units positioned where they need to be. Some movements are short and practical, but they are vital to keeping the timetable working. Historically, this unit is the Siemens DEZIRO Classic. Built from 1998 to 2008, it has a top speed of 120 km per hour and is used across Germany, especially on non-electrified lines. Chapter 4, the 143. Next, we come to the Class 143, an electric locomotive with a very different background from the modern multiple units seen earlier. In this timetable, the 143 has 59 services. Around half of those are depot moves, with 30 short workings lasting between 1 and 9 minutes. Most of them are even shorter than that, usually somewhere between 1 and 4 minutes. In this area, the locomotive is often seen doing exactly this kind of practical work: short movements, positioning stock, and shuffling between operational points rather than working a long passenger run. The remaining services are not Frankfurt departures at all. Instead, they run between Mainz, Bischofsheim, and Wiesbaden Hauptbahnhof. This means the locomotive's role in this chapter is more about its presence in the wider timetable, rather than a direct service out of Frankfurt itself. That makes this a useful chapter in the lineup. Not every train is making a major departure from the main platforms. Some movements are short, operational, and easy to overlook, but they are still a vital part of the daily schedule. The 143 fits that perfectly, a locomotive doing the background work that keeps the network moving. Historically, the class began life as the Deutsche Reichsbahn Class 243 in East Germany, before later becoming the Class 143. It was built by L.E.W. Hennigsdorf from the mid-1980s into the early 1990s. With a top speed of 120 km per hour, it was not designed for high speed, but as a dependable electric workhorse for passenger and general railway service. So, Chapter 4 gives us a look at the operational side of the network. Short moves, older traction, and a locomotive whose importance comes from reliability and everyday use. Chapter 5, the 425. Next we have the Class 425. This is another electric multiple unit, but it plays a different role from the S-Bahn train we saw earlier. In this timetable, the 425 is used heavily, with 91 services in total. 24 of those are empty depot moves, usually lasting only a few minutes. The rest are passenger services, either running from Frankfurt to Mainz Hauptbahnhof or from Wiesbaden Hauptbahnhof to Frankfurt Höchst. In this chapter, the train fits neatly into the regional side of the morning traffic. It is not a locomotive-hauled train, and it is not a high-speed express. Instead, it is a self-contained electric unit built for regular stopping services and medium-distance regional work. That makes it a very practical train for a busy hub. Services can be formed, turned around, and sent back into traffic with minimal fuss. The empty depot moves also highlight how much of the timetable is about behind-the-scenes staging, placing the right unit in the right place at the right time. Compared with the massive double-deck formations, this unit feels much more compact. But it still plays an important part in the overall flow, especially on these vital links between Frankfurt, Mainz, Wiesbaden, and Höchst. So, Chapter 5 gives us a clear look at the everyday workhorse of the regional lines. It is a train that keeps the network balanced, filling the gaps between the high-speed services and the heavy double-deck formations. Chapter 6, the 411. Now, we move from regional and local traffic to one of the long-distance trains in the Frankfurt timetable, the Class 411, better known as the ICE-T. In this timetable, the Class 411 has a much smaller number of services than the regional units we have seen so far, with 21 services in total. Most of these are passenger workings between Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof and Mainz Hauptbahnhof, with journey times usually lasting somewhere between 35 and 53 minutes. There is also one empty stock move, running from Wiesbaden Hauptbahnhof to Frankfurt Höchst. So, compared with the earlier chapters, the Class 411 is not appearing constantly. It has a more focused role. When it does show up, it brings a very different character to the scene. This is not a short S-Bahn hop, and it is not a practical depot move with a small regional unit. This is an ICE set, moving through the Frankfurt area, representing the long-distance side of the station's traffic. In the scene itself, the train immediately stands apart from the regional stock around it. The ICET has that familiar white body, the red stripe, and a much smoother profile than the commuter and regional trains. Even at lower speeds around the station area, it gives the chapter a more mainline feel. The train may not be racing through at high speed here, but visually it still changes the tone of the video. The Class 411 is part of the ICET family, with the letter T referring to its tilting capability. Unlike the ICE1 and ICE2, which use power cars, the ICET was designed as an electric multiple unit with distributed traction. That means the traction equipment is spread through the train rather than concentrated in separate power cars. For a route with curves and conventional railway lines, that kind of design makes sense. It gives the train the ability to run at higher speeds without needing a fully dedicated high-speed line. In real life, the ICET was developed for long-distance services on upgraded conventional routes. Its maximum speed is 230 km per hour, but the important thing is not just the top speed. The tilting system was intended to allow faster running through curves, improving journey times while still using existing railway infrastructure. In the Frankfurt timetable, though, we are seeing it in a more contained setting. This is the station area, with junctions, platforms, signals, and other traffic all close together. The Class 411 is not showing its full high-speed capability here. Instead, it becomes part of the wider Frankfurt flow, moving between major stations and sharing the network with S-Bahn units, regional trains, and depot movements. That contrast is one of the reasons this chapter works well in the middle of the video. By this point, we have already seen several everyday regional types. The Class 411 adds the long-distance layer without leaving the Frankfurt area. It shows how the same station can handle very different kinds of traffic within the same morning period. Most of these services here are between Frankfurt and Mainz, which also keeps the chapter tied to the route rather than turning it into a completely separate high-speed feature. It is an ICE train, but in this timetable it is working a relatively short section, moving between important regional hubs rather than only appearing as a distant express. Historically, the ICET entered service from 1999 onward. The Class 411 version is the 7-car variant, while the shorter Class 415 uses 5 cars. The Class 411 was built by a consortium involving Siemens, DWA, Duowag, and Fiat Ferroviaria, with the tilting technology linked to the Pendolino family. So, Chapter 6 gives us the long-distance face of Frankfurt, an ICET working through the same dense railway environment as the regional and commuter traffic, but bringing a more modern, high-speed presence to the morning lineup. Chapter 7, the 430. Next is the Class 430, and in this timetable it is by far one of the busiest units we see in the Frankfurt area. There are 436 services for the Class 430. Most of them run between Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof and Wiesbaden Hauptbahnhof, or in the opposite direction. These are not short station hop services either. Most runs take between 43 and 58 minutes, giving this fleet a much larger role than the very brief underground movements we saw earlier with the 423. There are also a few shorter services to and from Hochheim, along with empty depot moves around Wiesbaden. So, even in this short chapter, The Class 430 represents a massive part of the commuter flow west of Frankfurt. Here, the scene is brief, but the train's role is not. It is a unit that quietly fills the timetable, keeping frequent passenger services moving. Chapter 8. The 403. Before we continue, a quick reminder, if you're enjoying this video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss future Train Sim World videos. It really helps the channel, and feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts or feedback on this narrated train spotting format. Now, we move to one of the most recognizable trains in the German high-speed fleet, the Class 403, better known as the ICE-3. In this timetable, the Class 403 has 76 services. Most of these are relatively short workings of around 15 minutes, running specifically to Frankfurt Airport, alongside a number of empty stock moves. This means we aren't seeing any full passenger services out on the main lines here. Even so, the 403 immediately changes the character of the video. Instead of a long-distance express passing through, what we are seeing is a premium high-speed shuttle linking the city to one of Germany's biggest aviation hubs. The scene is still very much inside the Frankfurt area, so we are not seeing the ICE-3 at anything close to its full potential. Around the station, the train is moving through junctions, platforms, signals, and dense overhead wiring. It is controlled, measured, and part of the same busy railway environment as everything else we have seen so far. But visually, it stands apart. The long white body, red stripe, and smooth profile give it a much cleaner and more modern appearance than most of the regional stock around it. Even at low speed, the Class 403 has that distinct high-speed presence. It looks like a train built for something bigger than the station throat it is currently passing through. The airport services also make perfect sense for this train. Frankfurt Airport is one of the most important transport hubs in Germany, and the rail connection between the main station and the airport is a key part of the wider network. In the timetable, these shorter movements help link the city centre with the airport area, while also adding long-distance stock into the local Frankfurt flow. Historically, the Class 403 is part of the ICE-3 family. Unlike the older sets, which use power cars, it uses distributed traction with powered equipment spread through the train. The Class 403 is the single-system German domestic version. The trains are 8-car sets around 200 meters long and entered passenger service from July 2000. They are approved for up to 330 kilometers per hour, though in regular operation they usually run up to 300 kilometers per hour on suitable high-speed lines. So, Chapter 8 gives us Frankfurt's high-speed side. Not at full speed, but still unmistakable. A short airport working, a busy station environment, and one of the most iconic modern trains passing through the morning traffic. Chapter 9. The 401. For the final chapter, before we get to the little extra part I mentioned at the start of the video, we bend the rules slightly and move just beyond the 8 to 9 o'clock window, with the Class 401, better known as the ICE-1. In this timetable, the Class 401 has 28 services. Most of these are empty stock moves, which makes this chapter feel a little different from the passenger departures earlier in the video. There are only a handful of actual services to or from Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof, Mainz, and Wiesbaden, along with one service to Frankfurt Airport. So, even though the ICE-1 is one of the most important trains in German high-speed history, its role here is quite operational. Around Frankfurt, we are not seeing it stretch its legs on a high-speed section. We are seeing it in the station environment, moving through dense track work, signals, platforms, and overhead wires as part of the morning railway flow. That contrast is part of what makes the scene interesting. The ICE-1 is a large train, formed with a power car at each end and passenger coaches in between. Compared with the multiple units seen earlier, it has a much more traditional long-distance train layout. It looks heavier, longer, and more imposing, especially when moving through the confined Frankfurt area. The empty stock moves also make sense in a place like this. A major station does not only handle passenger departures, it also has to position trains, move sets between platforms and sidings, and prepare stock for later services. The Class 401 may only have 28 services in the timetable, but those movements still matter, because a high-speed train has to be in the right place before it can become a passenger service. In the scene itself, the Class 401 brings a different tone to the video. The earlier Class 403 showed the more modern ICE 3 style, distributed traction, smoother profile, and a more compact, high-speed set. The ICE one feels older and more substantial. It has that classic Intercity Express shape, with the dedicated power cars giving it a very recognizable silhouette. Historically, the ICE1 was the first production German high-speed train and the first member of the Intercity Express family. The trains were constructed between 1989 and 1993, with 60 train sets built. They originally entered service in the early 1990s, bringing regular high-speed ICE operation to Germany. In service, the ICE1 has been approved for up to 280 kilometers per hour, although that kind of speed is obviously not what we are seeing here in Frankfurt. Instead, this chapter shows the other side of high-speed operation. Before the open main line, before the fast running, and before the long-distance journey begins, there is the station work, careful movements, platform access, and positioning through one of the busiest rail hubs in the country. So, Chapter 9 closes the main part of the video with a classic. The Class 401 may be slightly outside the original time window, but as the original ICE, it earns its place here, not at full speed, but as part of Frankfurt's wider morning operation. Earlier on that day, the Class 101. Before the main morning sequence began, there was one more train worth including, the Class 101. And as we reach the final part of the video, a quick reminder, if you enjoyed it, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss future Train Sim World videos. It really helps the channel, and feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts or feedback on this narrated train spotting format. The Class 101 appears much less often in this timetable than most of the trains we have seen earlier. It has 13 services in total, running between Frankfurt Hbf and Mainz, with journey times usually somewhere between 30 and 50 minutes. The locomotive also brings a different type of traction into the video. After the multiple units, cab cars, ICE sets, and depot movements, this is a classic electric locomotive working passenger stock. It gives the scene a traditional mainline feel, locomotive at the front, coaches behind, and a proper intercity presence moving through the station area. Historically, the Class 101 became one of Deutsche Bahn's main high-speed electric locomotives for intercity services. It was built to replace older express passenger locomotives and became strongly associated with long-distance coaching stock operations across Germany. So, to close out this Frankfurt video, we finish not with the final movement of the morning hour, but with something from earlier that day, the Class 101 running between Frankfurt and Mainz, and adding one last piece to the variety of trains around Frankfurt Hauptbahnhof. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.